Okay people, so we finally reached the conclusion of the Naruto versus Delta fight in Boruto episode 199. It definitely was reminiscent of some things we've seen in the past, but also I like how it took somewhat of a shonen trope and it morphed it into what ultimately Boruto is all about. If you missed my last week's review or discussion about the episode 198, I said one of the pivotal factors about Boruto's anime is family. Is a very, very big deal. It's a family-oriented series to a certain degree. Obviously, you have these villains and all that jazz, but definitely at the very least, especially when it comes to the older generation, the Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, etc., they're very family-oriented, and they give that vibe, and it makes it feel very wholesome to a certain degree of like, yo, the older generation protecting the newer generation, protecting the young ones and whatnot. In this episode, it took a shonen trope and involved that aspect, and I really loved it because something huge needs to be said regarding Naruto's character, and we're gonna get into it. We're gonna talk about it with this one because there was a little bit of once again naysayers, people talking about the art and animation in this episode, but there was also some other things to discuss and big improvements as well that the Boruto anime is making, in particular in some of the stuff from the second half of the episode, because we didn't only get Naruto versus Delta, we also got the Boro expansion with Code, so we're gonna talk about that as well. Without further ado, people, let's jump into it. Naruto's anger kicking Delta's ass and turning her into scrap heaps. Let's do it.
No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done.
Okay people, yes, we are finally here. Naruto vs. Delta has reached its climax, its conclusion. It is over. And honestly, there was a few things I want to say. For starters, let's talk about, once again, one of the things which I'm starting to notice this is becoming very, very integral to anime fans, is talking about art and animation, which, don't get me wrong, it is anime, short for animation. So absolutely, you got to talk about art and animation. But I feel like to a certain degree, people are just constantly judging everything to a certain standard that is, especially for a weekly released series, such as the Boruto anime, nearly impossible to meet. Because a lot of people want and expect every episode, especially the fighting episodes, to have episode 65, Naruto and Sasuke versus Momoshiki level of animation, and that's just not going to happen. Not for a weekly release, not for something that, you know what I'm saying, they busting their ass to bring us each and every week 4 to 5 times a month. Like, it's not going to happen. But yeah, in terms of art and animation, once again, it wasn't stellar. There's some people that were saying that it was worse than last week's episode. I'd say that there was some points where it seemed as though, and maybe I'm off on this assessment, but it seemed like they were trying to mimic certain aspects of like really good Sakuga, but it didn't really work. Like some of the hand-to-hand combat between Naruto and Delta, it felt like they were trying to go in that direction, but nothing was stellar in particular on the animation side. It was sometimes even looking a little bit like kind of just flat, and you could argue there was small instances of it kind of feeling like fan animation, at the very least some art particular portions. But then in terms of the art, since we're going that way, there was a lot of portions that looked great on the art side of things. The animation wasn't amazing in this episode by any stretch of the imagination, but the art, certain parts where like Naruto is doing his Rasengan and when he's blasting it against Delta, and then the second half as well, like the art in this episode did look great. So there was some portions of, you know, the animation being wonky and a few small select parts where the art was kind of but for the most part, at the very least, the art shined. It's just like I expected, especially for a Studio Pierrot production, because this was created in-house by Studio Pierrot. I guess a lot of us expected a little bit more, but that's not to say, once again, that it takes away entirely from the episode, because people are forgetting that not only are we watching, of course, for art and animation, but story plays a big factor. And considering we're not getting like art and animation of like, I don't know, the 2016 Berserk or some terrible shit like that, I think we're all right. I think it was okay-ish in terms of the art and animation, and considering again the story and the battle was all right, we're fine on that aspect. And as I mentioned, there was some hand-to-hand combat. Honestly, there were certain portions of this fight that even reminded me of like old Naruto vibes. Like when they're just throwing hands, it was like, oh shit, you know, it kind of feels like taking it back to the basics, because even though there's still the huge elements of him doing the giant Rasengan and all that shit, there was smaller elements that it felt a little bit nostalgic to a certain degree. Now, I'm not going to say that it was completely going into that OG Naruto, but it did give little bit of that vibe, and I was kind of excited for that as well. But fam, this needs to be said. I stated this earlier that there was something that needs to be said about Naruto, and it was very reminiscent of a shonen trope. Let's talk about that, because one of the things in this episode in particular was Naruto's rage against Delta, and I think that was what pushed him to go the route that he did, because, you know, there could have been several different ways he could have tried to go at Delta. He could have just tried to straight up outmaneuver her with some taijutsu. There was a lot of methods he could have took, but instead he wanted to just, you know, basically blow out her batteries, so to speak. And in particular, one of the things he said was, remember, I told you that if you try to go at any of these kids, including Kawaki, that I was going to make you pay. I was going to destroy you and all of Kara, and I'm not going to stop. And seeing his rage, it almost felt like it was taking a shonen trope of, like, you know, let's just say a Super Saiyan 2 Gohan, or just in general a character that rages and gets out of control angry because, you know, their family members, their dad, their mom, whatever is getting hurt, and exploding with rage and using that power for good. It felt like it was doing that, but from a parental standpoint, because Naruto is, you know, now the older one, and basically the sensei and all of that jazz, just the parental figure in general. Seeing him using that anger of Delta attacking his children and destroying her and going wild, still keeping intact for the most part his consciousness, because again, he's an adult. He's not letting that childlike mentality of, no, I'm gonna make him pay. I love that. I think that needed to be said, that this was once again solidifying Naruto has changed, but for the better, and maturing. Like, he's a parent now, and just like any parent that really cares about their children, like myself, like, yo, you do something to my child, I can't tell you what might happen because I might bug the hell out. I love my child, and Naruto going that direction, and even on top of that, adding the fact that he's going like that for Kawaki because he feels that bond with him, that is awesome as well, and that ties all into the story of everything that was built up to this point of Naruto and Kawaki. I love that shit. I love that. That needed to be said, that they took a shonen trope of the kid getting mad, put it on an adult, put it because of his children, and made Delta pay. That bitch got her back blown the fuck out, because basically they go through a beam struggle with straight up and down. You can't tell me otherwise. That was very heavily inspired from Gohan versus Cell, since we're on the topic. I mean, at the end of the day, when you see them both pushing the beam back and forth, it was just straight up like, yo, that was Gohan versus Cell all the way. Even the reactions of Kawaki, Boruto, and Himawari, like back feeling the, you know, the waves of the blast and shit like that, like it just straight up reminded me of that all the way. But then Naruto coming up with the idea of, okay, well, let's overload this bitch. Let's give her so much chakra she can't take it anymore, which I want to say Vegeta did that with, was it Android 19 if I'm not mistaken? He blew him out of basically being able to hold energy or ki or whatnot. Naruto did the same thing with chakra against Delta, and yeah, he blew her out and ultimately gave her that giant Rasengan that left her there. And I was just like, yo, a lot of that I argue is attributed to, again, his rage. You played with my kids and now I made you pay and I left you there. And yeah, you could still see that ultimately even Naruto says, hey, I gave extra effort to make sure I didn't kill her. That's still the good side of nature, and that's again the mature side of, well, I didn't just destroy her completely. Even though I was angry, I left her alive. We still need her for questioning anyways, and that's just part of Naruto's good nature, to be honest. But I love how Kawaki knows, like, this is again just showcasing everything that he's been through and how much he knows about this organization. He's like, no, you left her to live. What are you doing? Kill her right now. And then a freaking atomic bomb seemingly goes off right there, and they have to get away. And yeah, that was really dope to just showcase that Kara, even with their own, they don't play, oh, you lost, okay, yeah, well, I'm going to self-destruct now, which I want to say it was either she knew about it, automatic self-destruction, or it was like an implanted thing. I'm not sure exactly if she was conscious of that was going to happen when she takes the L, but it just shows that Kara, they don't give a shit. They're crazy. It also makes you wonder with that backpack that was, you know, observing the fight the entire time, what's going to happen there, because now they got more data on Naruto. Now they could bring that back and, okay, this is how he fights, this is his giant Rasengan, this is X, Y, and Z. They got more data, which again reminds me really of the androids when Dr. Gero was watching, you know, the Z Warriors all those years. I don't know, a lot of shit that gave me those vibes, just being honest. And overall, I really rocked with it. The animation and art, of course, it could have been better, especially the animation, but for what they delivered in terms of the story, in terms of the battle, in terms of just seeing Naruto flexing as an adult with children, I rocked with it heavy. Second half of the episode, another positive thing to say, the fact that they're expanding on stuff that, just being honest, in the manga, Boro, I called him boring, just being honest. honest. In the manga, I was like, yo, Boro's boring. We don't know shit about this dude. What the hell? The anime is changing all of that and adding in this expansion of him being with these worshippers, going to this town, which you can't tell me otherwise. I straight up felt like he was going to cure Rona. Like, he was going to cure Rona because these people were coughing and all this shit. It felt like he straight up was, yes, I'm curing Rona now. Like, that's what Boro does in the anime. He's the Rona killer. Because he's in this town, and ultimately there's a lot of people that are sick, and he's acting like he has this healing thing. But there was also something, well, he's not acting, he's actually healing these people from their, disease or their sickness or whatever the heck they have. But there was something there that kind of had me wondering, because ultimately he starts bringing up the infinite Tsukuyomi. So I'm wondering if this whole religious thing, like, do they idolize Madara? Like, that would be freaking insane if they idolized Madara Uchiha, and that's why they're doing these things, and that's why he's bringing up we can all be good in the infinite Tsukuyomi permanently. Like, yo, we just need to go that direction. So that was kind of something that was interesting, and I'm like, that would be so fire if Boro just was a worshiper of the Uchiha god himself. And then with Code showing up, trying to bring him back to the base, you can see that one of the temperaments of Boro, and what gets him a little bit in the rage side, is when Code basically called him a fraud. He was like, no, fam. And honestly, Boro and the garb and the way he was acting with this whole religious thing, it kind of reminded me to a smaller degree, and I'm not saying that it was inspired even, to be honest with you, but of that priest, the guy from Berserk, that he's nuts and he's just really worshiping heavily. Like, that's kind of what Boro reminds me of, just being honest. But overall, episode, honestly, I really enjoyed it. I loved a lot of it. You got action, you got, once again, moving forward with the whole battle against Kara, you got some extra additions to Boro's character, actually making me give a fuck about him, not saying, like, now I can say he's a little less boring. We still haven't gotten anything crazy about him, but I like him more than I like manga Boro already. But I'm curious what you guys think. For starters, Naruto versus Delta. How did you feel about Naruto's rage over his children, him taking out Delta? How did you feel about the ultimate outcome of the battle? Were you disappointed with the art and the animation? What do you think about the expansion with Boro and this whole religious stuff and Code bringing him back to the base? And your overall thoughts and expectations for the Boruto anime with episode 200 and beyond. Yo, I just realized 200 episodes. Boruto has been around for 200 episodes next week. Holy shit. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links of course in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life, boy. Have an awesome day. Peace in. And yeah, Naruto's rage. Don't play with his children. I feel that to the max.
To